You're listening to MuniCast, the podcast that discusses municipal leadership. Season 3 of MuniCast is brought to you by SaskTel's Innovation and Collaboration team. SaskTel can help you sort through the noise to create solutions that add value quickly, whether it's reducing your environmental footprint, driving investment, community development, or just saving money. Contact your SaskTel account manager to find out more. MuniCast is hosted by SUMA, the voice of Saskatchewan's hometowns. I'm Stephanie, and joining me today is Jordan McPhail, Councillor for the Town of La Ronge. Jordan is serving his second term on council and is a proud member of the La Ronge Indian Band. Jordan is a proud father and husband and is passionate about doing what is best for the future of his community. Welcome, Jordan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, no problem. I'm just down in Saskatoon here today, away from my home community of La Ronge, but certainly glad to be able to join in and have a good conversation with you today. So with that, let's get right into it.
Perfect. I wanted to start off our conversation by learning a little bit more about you and your journey in municipal politics. This is your second term on council with the Town of La Ronge, and you've certainly made an impact. Can you tell us what drew you to municipal politics and what keeps you there?
For sure. So I was fairly young in the world of politics when I was, getting involved. I think I was 19 at the time when I first started getting involved, and just started meeting some people and having conversations about, what's going on in their daily lives, and seeing how, somebody could make a difference for that, and with connecting them with the right people and make some difference in people's lives. They asked me kind of around the municipal election to maybe put some consideration to running for my municipal government. And at first, I thought, yeah, right, that's definitely not something that's up my alley. I like to be the guy behind the scenes. And after quite a bit of support in my home community, I decided to put my name forward. And I remember on election night, I think our ballots were finally counted around 2:00 in the morning. And I still want to say thank you to the hardworking municipal election employees that have taken the time out of their day and done their duties to be able to keep democracy alive. But I remember being at about 2:00 in the morning, and my campaign manager came out, sat in the car, and he just exhausted from the day. And I said, so? He's like, oh, right, yeah, you're elected. And I went, okay, now what, shithead? And it was a very steep learning curve from the very beginning. And I think that's what keeps me there, is I feel like even after all these years in municipal politics, I'm still learning. I'm still finding out new skills and abilities that are necessary to be a good municipal politician and more so an advocate for the community. So that's what keeps me there. I think that the work is never finished, and I always believe that there's more work to be done. So I'm that type of person that can get bored relatively easily, and I think that in the world of politics, if you ever think that your job is done, then it will be in the next election.
Absolutely. Municipal politics is definitely something that will keep you on your toes. And I think that was a good point that you made about how there are so many people involved, including the election staff, campaign managers, and it's a really big system in order to keep it all moving and going. What were some of the challenges that you faced as a member of council during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic was certainly not something that anyone was ready to campaign on, that they had any true ideas. But the COVID-19 pandemic, I would say, had brought to light a lot of the issues that our communities face when it comes to accessible recreation or the healthcare crises that we were facing, and more so even some of the mental health and addiction crises that our communities were facing. We had a lot of people that already had some generalized anxiety that were using alcohol to kind of mask that. We had a lot of people that just needed that assistance. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people were used to meeting their therapist in person and had to get used to a whole new plethora of challenges to be able to manage their mental health. And especially when meetings were being canceled and your social activity was being reduced, I know that there was a lot of mental health challenges that we were facing even in La Ronge in northern Saskatchewan. And I think that was part of the biggest challenge that I would say the COVID-19 has brought to light is just um, the total change that everyone felt, whether they were an introvert or extrovert. I believe the introverts were like, you know, I love being kind of by myself, but I would still like the opportunity to go out and, sit in that coffee shop alone and have that coffee, right? And the extroverts were, I think having a lot of issues because they're used to being around people and surrounding their people, and that's where they gain their energy. So I think, and especially in the world of politics, that's where you made most of your connections happen, was through meetings and through coffee meetings, and you had to try and change all of this to a virtual world, and there was lots of challenges, and I mean, to go through them all, I think would be an entire episode in and of itself. So I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. You highlighted some of the major challenges that most communities went through in shifting to virtual and experiencing higher mental health crises. Do you feel that there were some challenges that were unique to northern or more remote communities that some of the larger city centers or bigger towns and villages may not have experienced?
That's an interesting question, because I would say that, as I previously stated, I think a lot of the issues were just brought to the forefront during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that, like in La Ronge and a lot of northern and remote communities, we've had mental health and addiction crises in northern Saskatchewan for quite some time. And, whether that be due to the remote nature of our communities or the isolation or just the lack of services that a general city or other areas in the province might have access to, or they might be a small town that's only 200-300 people, but they're still within a couple hours drive of the services that they may need. And when you look at communities like Stony Rapids and Wollaston, like or even go as far north and isolated as Uranium City, when you go into communities like that, you have to rely on community to move your community forward in a lot of situations, and you kind of have to be self-reliant. And I often say that the northern people are the most resilient people that I've ever met, because they've had to be. And I think that would be a unique challenge that northern and remote communities would face, is that they have to be self-reliant in a lot of situations when it comes to mental health and addictions programming or services to be offered. You have to rely on community rather than having the access to professionals in those communities.
I think that's so true, is that need for self-reliance, and particularly because of that lack of access and the difficulty getting to those services. You had mentioned a couple of questions ago that one of the things that you had seen was increased alcohol and cannabis use. And in your previous term, you had voted for bylaws to restrict the sale of alcohol and cannabis in La Ronge. Can you tell me a little bit more about what outcomes you'd hope to see and what effects you anticipated the restriction of cannabis and alcohol would have for the well-being of the community?
So I know that during the conversations when we were leading up to the option selection, I know that a community alcohol management plan that put countless hours into advocacy in our community and research and evidence-based, outcome focused solutions for our community. This would also be a really good time to shout out a late friend of mine, Harold Johnson, who sat on that committee and has recently passed here in Saskatchewan. And whenever we talk about mental health and addictions in northern Saskatchewan, I know that Harold Johnson's name will never not come up in the conversation. He was a great man, and as we have the conversations around mental health and addictions in northern Saskatchewan, I think Harold was one of the people that were the forefront of those conversations. But more to your point on the outcomes that we'd hope to see through our conversations and consultations with community and the stakeholders in our community, we had 95% of people say that in a survey, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but I believe it was over 90% of the people in La Ronge had said that they feel that alcohol is a problem in our community. And I know that we were challenged early on. I think it was one of our first meetings where we met with this committee and started talking about what we were going to do about this. And when we started to have the conversation around restricting alcohol, I know that a lot of our business community certainly had some questions about that. We had town halls and plenty of one-on-one consultation meetings to try and make sure that we thread the needle between restricting the sale of alcohol and providing some movement on restricting the sale of alcohol to allow community members to, maybe look at something different rather than alcohol, to mask or help them with their mental health and addictions. So what we were looking for is, more kids in school. We were looking at, less people being reliant on alcohol to address mental health issues and look at a healthier option. And I remember at the time, and I mean, I'm sure you can go back and find news stories, I had said that these bylaws in and of themselves will not solve this issue. You can't legislate your way out of addictions or mental health. You need services and be able to provide those services in your community. This was just one of the steps that a municipal government can take, is reducing the amount of access to alcohol and cannabis by way of how many hours they're available to be sold, and kind of how late into the evening they can be sold. And hope that model would show some positive results, and maybe we would see the provincial government see those positive results, and maybe they would implement it province-wide. But we wanted to be the forefront of that. So that was what our goal was at the time, I know, and certainly my goal at the time when we were having those discussions.
I like that you highlighted there that it was part of a larger picture, that the bylaws are just one step in one of many other steps that need to happen to help address those issues. Recently, La Ronge Council discussed the homelessness encampments that are appearing around town and the possibilities of using municipal land to help address that. Several other municipalities in Saskatchewan have also been dealing with increased homelessness. What do you think municipal leaders can do to help address these situations?
Well, this has always been I always say it's a nasty J word that comes up a lot in the world of politics, and that's jurisdiction. And when we talk about homelessness in our community, I think anybody that no matter what side of or what color of the political stripe you may wear, and I mean, in the world of municipal politics, there are no real political stripes. You have to look at the homelessness crisis in Saskatchewan and communities as a crisis, and you need to have all hands on deck. And I know that in our community over the course of the summer, we had mayor and administration, chief and administration, and our nonprofit sectors all come together and try and find a holistic way of addressing homelessness in our area. And I think they're on to a really good start, and I think we're going to be getting close to being able to find some permanent solutions. And I think you have to go to government with solutions to your problems rather than just the problems themselves. And I think that one of the things that we're finding is, as we have these conversations, you're putting people in a place where all this work is being done around them, and hopefully that they'll join in, and they'll take that all hands on deck approach as well, and be willing to offer some help and some assistance. And I think that when we, and this is just my personal belief, is when we look at homelessness in our area, that's poverty, that's typically that leads to homelessness. You do see the odd case of addictions, or even members from the LGBTQ2 plus community that have been ousted from their families due to who they are. And I think that when we have those types of situations that arise, we need to have the services readily available as soon as they are needed. And I think that if we hold our provincial and federal governments to account, we'll see a little bit more movement on that. Like I said, all of the issues that lead to homelessness, to me, when we talk about the J word of jurisdiction, in my personal belief, it's something that the provincial government needs to be able to make some movement on, because whether it be social services, health, or even in some cases, if people need to break into garden sheds and whatnot to gain shelter, that becomes a crime, and that's which is still under provincial jurisdiction under corrections and policing. So for me, I believe that this needs to, what communities can do is come together and build a solution that fits their community, and bring that to people that are willing to help.
Across the province, SaskTel is engaged with many different municipal organizations who seek to innovate. Contact your SaskTel account manager to learn more about some of these initiatives and how they can help your municipality today. I heard a lot about the importance of working together with different organizations, different levels of government, and how municipal governments can do some work in that area, but that it takes provincial government, the federal government, nonprofit organizations, and a real community response to actually address those issues. And during your campaign for council, you highlighted that you would like to do more work involving regional partners and move forward with the creation of an economic development plan to boost tourism. Is that something that you're still engaged in? And what do you see the benefits being for the town of La Ronge?
Well, one of the things that I think any member of the council, I certainly don't want to speak on their behalf, but I believe any member of council or chief and council in our area knows that La Ronge is a place that you can work hard and play even harder. You can see just recently that the town was named as the most active community in Saskatchewan through participation, and I think that's due to the hard work of so many people in our tri community of focusing in on recreation. We've had the Bora trails in our areas, which is the Boreal Outdoor Recreation Association, I believe is what the acronym for Bora is. But they've created like so many kilometers of nice groomed trail in the area. We can look at a lot of ecotourism in La Ronge. It's one of those areas that you can go and explore. We've got a humongous lake. I often say I think it's one of the largest lakes in Saskatchewan. We've got a nice provincial map that tells you where all the rough spots can be, and just make sure you stay away from those is what I tell anybody that goes on it. But we've got basketball courts and tennis courts, and the JRMCC on our neighboring reserve is just an amazing facility. They've got mini golf and hockey and a gym, and like I said, it's our community is I think one of a kind. We have a real opportunity with our regional partners to leverage that and make it such a beautiful place. And when we talk about the economic development in our area, I know that the town has undergone a Highway 102 economic corridor master plan, where we're looking at creating spaces for business and industry to open in our areas. And I know that that's going to involve our regional partners as we try and make sure that we are bringing more services and not just duplicating those services in our area. So hopefully we are going to we're going to see some fruition or some fruit come from that tree as we continue down the road of economic development.
And good luck to you with all of that. It sounds like it's not only a great opportunity for tourism, but also for members of the community to stay active and to be exploring the beautiful land that you have up there. And you've already touched on this a little bit in some of the other questions that we went over, but what changes do you feel that all levels of government need to be making to better address mental health in Saskatchewan communities?
That's another one of those questions that I think could probably be an episode in and of itself. We're definitely in a crisis point, I think, in Saskatchewan. We've gotten our COVID-19 pandemic that has certainly, like I said earlier, has highlighted a lot of the mental health challenges that we face as a province. And I think that finding as many ways as possible to address those issues and in a way that is sustainable and in a way that is obviously time and economically sustainable, I think is important. To have somebody have access to all the services they need and then realize that this isn't going to work and then have to pull that away from communities would be, I think, devastating in a lot of cases. So I think that when we are talking about mental health and addiction services or ways that provincial governments and federal governments can help us is reach out to those communities. In a lot of cases, I believe that almost every community has some sort of community wellness coordinator and recreation coordinators. I know in La Ronge we have the Hub, which is kind of a nonprofit conglomerate, if you will, that works to help at-risk youth find the services that they need. In our tri-community and in northern Saskatchewan, there's places like New North, which has been a great advocacy group, and in some cases been able to provide some pretty good programs to help youth find the right ways and the positive ways of living their life in northern Saskatchewan and other areas in the province. And I think that as those conversations happen, they will realize that there are ways to do this, rather than just having a mental health support worker in every classroom or in every school and in every hospital. There's so many things that we do, even as Indigenous leaders in our communities, that don't necessarily require a ton of investment to be able to provide a high level mental health and addiction strategy to overcome those challenges that individuals face in our community.
I think that's a really important point that you make there about how there isn't a one size fits all approach, and that if you talk to many of the communities, they already have some way of dealing with that that's community based, and that it's really important to tap into those resources that are already there. What are some of the main challenges that you see, and do you see regional collaboration supporting that in any way?
I think that as soon as you leave the major centers of Saskatchewan, whether it be Prince Albert, Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, Regina, maybe even North Battleford, when you start to leave those larger centers, if you will, I think regional collaboration is something that is almost necessary. We see it a lot with other services that we have to provide as municipal governments, whether it be, recreation facilities. I know North Battleford and the town of Battleford have to work closely to be able to provide some recreation facilities in those areas. I know that the town of La Ronge and Ronge and La Ronge Indian Band work closely on providing regional services. Just in our tri-community, we have a regional fire services, we have regional water, like water treatment plant, we have regional landfill and recycling center, we've got regional is like almost is something that we do very well. And don't get me wrong, all of those relationships take a long time to build, take a long time to forge the proper policies to make sure that they're fair and equal for people throughout the community. But I think they're highly worthwhile, and I don't believe that any one of us individually could do what we've done as a region. So do I see regional collaboration supporting this? Absolutely. And some of the main challenges that I will see is, once again, breaking down those J walls of jurisdiction, and making sure that as municipalities work with provincial and federal governments and Indigenous leaders from Métis nations and local First Nations, I think that if they are starting to look and taking challenges very seriously in their communities, if they all work together, they're always stronger together. And that's something that I think that we need to embrace in Saskatchewan. I always say that we're just over a million people strong, and I think that we have the voice of about 3 million. When you look at how Saskatchewan fares in the world of even federal politics, Saskatchewan holds quite a bit of weight when it comes to the economy, when it comes to tourism, and we've forged quite a bit of pretty cool things in Saskatchewan here when it comes to even like crown corporations and things that we have here in Saskatchewan that no other province has kind of championed as well as Saskatchewan has. So we're innovators and we're inventors, and I think that as we move forward, those are the challenges that we're going to need to face, is just finding out the way to invent the things that we need to in as many cool ways as we can.
I like how you mentioned there that regionalization is almost at the core of what people do here in Saskatchewan. It's very grassroots based, but it's how they are used to working. And sometimes there are challenges to that, but that collaboration and building relationships to get there is a long-term thing. So that brings me to the end of my questions for you today. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate hearing more about your experiences and your insights.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to reach out to me, and I'm certainly glad to be involved in the podcast series, and I hope that the listeners enjoy the episode. And I want to thank all the people that have done so much work in our community over the last little while here to make La Ronge such a great place to live and grow up, and keep on keeping on, and let's get some things done together as a regional voice. And as SUMA, don't hesitate to reach out to your board members and let them know what you need in your communities, because I know that whenever we've had the opportunity to reach out to SUMA, it's been a very great experience to be able to help in addressing some of the challenges we face in the community. So thank you again.
This brings us to the end of another episode of MuniCast. Thank you for tuning in to Season 3. We hope you enjoy it as much as we have enjoyed having these conversations. We hope that you'll join us for Episode 4, where we will be speaking with Brandy Bell, Senior Policy Analyst for Indigenous and Northern Relations with the Ministry of Government Relations and Secretariat of Embracing Life.